The localization of ancient Indian influences in Southeast Asia marks one of the region's most influential processes of cultural exchange. The localized Indic political systems and religions, especially Hinduism, provided an ideological foundation for the many ancient Southeast Asian kingdoms and transformed the people's beliefs and ways of life. At the same time, its localized arts also brought about monumental architecture, beautiful literature, and other exquisite art forms, cherished as national treasures by the present-day nations to which these creations belong. Today, these localized Hindu influences from India remain the fabric of many Southeast Asian societies. To help Southeast Asians better understand the cultural heritage that they share, an activity blending academic lectures, practical learning, and site visits was organized for a group of people from various backgrounds by the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Regional Center for Archaeology and Fine Arts, also known as SEAMEO SPAFA. In 2012, SEAMEO SPAFA initiated the program series Spiritual Arts of Southeast Asia under the Center's Sacred Universe flagship program. The seminar and workshop on Hindu arts in Southeast Asia is the fourth edition of this series. It follows similar seminars and workshops on Islamic, Buddhist, and Christian arts.
Part of a program called Sacred Universe, in which we cover all the major beliefs and practices, religious practices. There is a lot of belief in sacredness, so we want to compare, as they appear in major religions. So Hinduism is a fourth religion that we cover, because we already covered the others in the past 5 years. And of course, Hinduism is most active in Bali, so that's why we do it here.
Okay. The 4-day seminar and workshop event was held from 28th to 31st May 2017. It was a collaborative effort between SEAMEO SPAFA and ISI Denpasar, or the Indonesian Institute of the Arts, Denpasar, in Bali, a college of arts whose relationship with SEAMEO SPAFA spans nearly 20 years. At this event, the two organizations also signed a memorandum of understanding for future collaboration. The current rector of ISI Denpasar, Professor Dr. E. Gede Arya Sugiarta, also serves as a member of SEAMEO SPAFA's governing board.
You have interrelation very, very close to the SEAMEO SPAFA. The last years, on 2016, SEAMEO SPAFA governing board meeting held in Bali, and we also together for the success the program of the SEAMEO SPAFA. And now, with the workshop of Hindu arts in Southeast Asia, we again collaboration with the SEAMEO SPAFA. I'm very, very glad to collaboration with the SEAMEO SPAFA, and SEAMEO SPAFA is very, very excited with us to the collaboration.
The aim of the seminar and workshop on Hindu arts in Southeast Asia was to introduce the Southeast Asian and international participants to the essence of Hindu arts and enhance their direct experience with Hindu heritage and practices and their capacity to disseminate knowledge on Hindu arts. This opportunity for knowledge exchange was also expected to advance cross-cultural understanding and mutual knowledge of Hindu arts and heritage among the participants and lead to future regional collaboration.
We have three kinds of activities. The first is the lecture, to give them a kind of a principle or essence of Hinduism and Hindu traditions, heritage in Southeast Asia. And the second kind of activity is the hands-on workshop that will give a chance to the participants to have a hands-on experience in the living tradition of Hinduism, like dancing, like music related to Hinduism, like singing as well, because these are all parts of the vibrant Hindu tradition nowadays, and also in the past. The third kind of activity is the field trip. So we are already in Bali, so we think that this is the largest community, the safeguard community for the Hindu tradition in Southeast Asia. So we would like to provide the opportunity for the participants to walk around, to let them see how Hinduism or Hindu beliefs are related to the way of life of the people, the fertility, the agriculture, the water, and all the kinds of living together with nature and with the gods.
Day 1 of the seminar and workshop focused on Hinduism in Bali. The island has a population of about 4.2 million people. While they account for only 1.7% of Indonesia's population, they constitute the biggest Hindu community in Southeast Asia, with 83.5% of the Balinese practicing Hinduism. Professor Dr. Iwayan Ardika of Udayana University, an archaeologist in Bali, was invited to give a keynote lecture on Balinese Hinduism and Hindu art forms. Based on archaeological evidence, contacts between India and Bali began around 2,000 years ago, bringing both Hindu and Buddhist influences to Bali. By the 11th century, Bali developed strong ties with East Java and adopted more of its Javanese Hindu customs. Then, in the mid-14th century, it was conquered by Majapahit, the largest Hindu kingdom on East Java. These cultural and political relations resulted in Bali being largely transformed into a Hindu culture. Evidence is shown in the similarities in temple architecture and sculpture between East Java and Bali.
We can see from the temple construction in Bali, which are very similar with those found in East Java, particularly at the Penataran Temple. The Penataran Temple in East Java from the 14th century look to me as the prototype of the Balinese temple now. At Trowulan, we also found the bas relief, which is look like the split gate, the temple gate in Bali today. So we can say that East Java is a kind of a source of the prototype of the Balinese temple construction today.
Although the majority of the Balinese practice Hinduism, the endurance of some traditional philosophical concepts of the island has allowed multiculturalism to thrive in Balinese society. Today, Balinese people often participate in religious ceremonies other than Hindu.
There are several cultural norms and values which supported multiculturalism in Bali. Those including Tatwamasi, which is literally mean that is you, which means you are as the same as me. So if you hurt somebody else, this means that you hurt yourself. So Tatwamasi, you as me. Empathy, something like that. The second value or philosophy of the Balinese people is what we call it Tri Hita Karana. Tri is means Sri, Hita is happiness, welfareness, and Karana is the cause. There are three things that cause human happiness, welfareness. And there is also a kind of norm, what we call it Nyama Braya. Nyama Braya literally means it's a relative, sibling, so we treat other people as our relative.
The blending of cultures and beliefs is common in the process of cultural change. This point was further highlighted in the following lecture titled Introduction to the Essence of Hinduism and Hindu Arts in Southeast Asia by Dr. Wanisan Nunsuk, SEAMEO SPAFA's Senior Specialist in Visual Arts and the Program Leader of the Seminar and Workshop on Hindu Arts in Southeast Asia. Dr. Nunsuk introduced basic concepts in the studies of Hindu beliefs and arts in Southeast Asia. He presented a theory that traces Hinduism back to the Indus Valley Civilization, located in today's Pakistan, around 2500 to 1500 BCE, before the arrival of the Indo-Aryans into the area.
This is just a speculation of scholars that trace it back. We have no clear evidence about this, but they often trace the origin of Hinduism through time to the Indus Valley civilizations. In that civilization, we have seals made of stone, like statite, which is a kind of soft soap stones, with animals, with scripts, with other figures on the seals. Most of the seals are bulls, like this, with heavy neck, the skin, and then the hump very prominent with the scripts as well. And bulls are also important in later Hinduism as the animal mouth of Shiva, one of the supreme god in Hinduism. And another one on the right is a picture or a figure of more like yogi with animals around it, with the horns and erect penis. So they associate this kinds of figure to Shiva that will be later on developed in Hinduism as well. So they trace it back to maybe the ideas of indigenous beliefs already before the arrivals of the Aryans to the Indus Valley, and after that Aryan picked this up and then developed later on Hinduism.
No single set of teachings defines what is referred to today as Hinduism. In fact, the religion is based on several scriptures and texts, including the Vedas, a large body of knowledge written between 1500 and 500 BCE. They consist of texts and commentaries on mantras, rituals, meditation, and philosophy. And while there are several strains of Hinduism, central to the religion is the gods, among whom Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma are most supreme. Indian influences, namely the political and social systems, as well as its religions, began to spread to Southeast Asia around 2,500 years ago, or 500 BCE. Scholars in the past refer to the process of adopting Indian influences as Indianization. The concept was proposed by the 20th century French scholar Georges Sédes, but this view about making Southeast Asia Indian was revised by later scholars who gave more agency to the local people in adopting elements of Indian culture and making them their own by mixing in the local beliefs.
These kinds of indigenous elements has been already integrated to Hinduism since they arrived in India from the Indo-European speaking people or the Indo-Aryans to the local people, and then they mix it up with all kinds of tribal beliefs. We call all of this a localization process, which is very important concept to remember, because we now don't believe that the Indian elements that came from India to Southeast Asia were in the whole package. They were actually fragmented and restated and selectively adopted in Southeast Asian cultures. Like the caste system is not so rigid and has never been rigid in Southeast Asia. And also some local beliefs that are in the form of earth gods and also all kinds of fertility entities are also at play in these kinds of process.
Localization shaped not only the belief system, but also architectural and artistic developments. This was further discussed on the second day of the seminar, while the rest of day one continued on the relations between Bali and Hinduism, including a hands-on workshop on Balinese dance and music in relation to Hinduism by the rector of ISI Denpasar. With the help of the university's instructors, students, and performers, the participants had the opportunity to learn simple movements of Balinese dance and how to play gamelan musical instruments.
again ya Gus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, go. 1, 2, 3.
Traditional Balinese dances can be grouped into 3 categories: Wali or sacred dances, Babali or semi-sacred dances, and Bali Balihan or entertainment dances. Sacred dances are performed during a temple ceremony to ensure its success. During the welcome dinner at the end of the first day, Isi Denpasar put on special performances featuring 4 sacred dances.
Almost all of the ritual ceremony in Hinduism, not completed without the presence of Balinese traditional dance and music. For example, in the temple ceremony, what we call the Pyodalan, usually perform the music and usually perform the dance. One example is Gamelan Gonggede is one of the big gamelan, the very big gamelan, which is a function to the ceremony in the temple. And also we have the Rejang dance and also the Baris Gede dance, usually presented in the temple ceremony. In this special occasion of workshop, we give briefly the new experience for the participant, how the art and how the music and dance in Bali very close relation to the Hinduism.
In the study of religious art, especially in the case of Hinduism, both the intangible aspect, such as its philosophy, related literature and rituals, and the tangible aspect, such as places of worship and iconography, go hand in hand. With this in mind, the lectures on day 2 tackled Hindu iconography in Southeast Asia and the localized artistic manifestations of Hindu beliefs and epics, followed by a field trip in the afternoon for participants to see how religious beliefs manifest themselves in social and cultural practices in Bali. Dr. Gauri Krishnan, Adjunct Associate Professor at the National University of Singapore's South Asian Studies Program, was invited to give 2 lectures. The first lecture was a comparative survey of Hindu iconography in Southeast Asia, and the second one explored Southeast Asian performing and contemporary arts that have elements of localized Hindu beliefs and epics.
What I was trying to explain was there are many elements which come from India to Southeast Asia, whether it is architectural principles, sculptural principles, iconography for, say, how to represent Shiva or Shiva Linga or Vishnu or the various other Hindu gods. What I have tried to do is to show that some of these influences or ideas are adapted selectively by cultural and artistic people in Southeast Asia.
Indian and Southeast Asian Hindu architecture and sculpture may share several basic similarities. For example, the Hindu temple may be constructed as a single cell with a tiered superstructure and a squared ground plan, but differences may exist in its details and decorations. Sometimes, differences are more obvious, for example, how the Balinese had adapted the Gopuram, or the gatehouse tower at the entrance of a Hindu temple, as the split gate which can be seen across Bali.
You have another example from Bali, which is a completely similar look or shape or form, but it has been completely treated in a different way. First, it has been split open and it has been divided, and there is no structure or like a wagon vaulted roof that goes on top like you find in South India. So this shala or wagon vault is missing in Bali, and this whole space has been actually divided up to look like a two halves, kind of symmetrical but 2 halves. So this is something unique about the way the Gopuram has been adapted in Balinese architecture.
In addition to architectural decorations, localized adaptation also occurred in epic literature, which explains why the Ramayana epic is different in each Southeast Asian culture.
How Ramayana is represented from, say, Prambanan, and how it is represented in Angkor Wat, it is totally different. The source is different, the way it has been narrated is different, the locations on the temple where it appears is also different. And so we can say that for Khmer people, they are interested in certain concepts or certain stories or certain heroes, whereas for the Central Javanese in Prambanan, they were actually just narrating the story. So each and every episode has been painstakingly carved in the reliefs of the Prambanan galleries. So these are the differences.
Agriculture is the #1 job provider in Bali, with vast paddy fields scattered around the island, providing a beautiful vista of greenery. Each year, many tourists come to visit Bali and admire its rice terraces and what is called subak. Subak has both physical and non-physical aspects to it. It consists of both a compound of rice fields, irrigation facilities, and a subak temple, as well as the social and cultural activities that take place there, including water management and rituals performed by the members of a subak. In 2012, 5 subak sites in Bali were together inscribed as a World Heritage Cultural Landscape by UNESCO. Access to these beautiful sites during the program was difficult due to distance and time constraints. Nevertheless, the seminar participants had an opportunity to experience the subak by visiting Subak Anggabaya in Denpasar, the capital of Bali. The field trip was led by Professor Dr. E. Wayan Windia from the Faculty of Agriculture, Udayana University. The Subak water management system is based on the Tri Hita Karana philosophy, or a threefold path to happiness in life, which emphasizes 3 types of relationships: the harmony between man and the gods, the harmony between man and his neighbors, and the harmony between man and the natural environment. So, respect to the gods, other humans, and nature plays a key role in Subak. Also, with Balinese beliefs in the sacredness of water, the earth, and fertility, each Subak must have a temple to perform rituals. For ceremonies organized by individual farmers alone, at least 15 ceremonies are performed during a farming cycle.
Writing of the
Writing and then to get data in the field.
After the field trip, Professor Dr. Ketut Donder from the Institute Hindu Dharma Nagari Denpasar gave a brief presentation on the importance of water in Balinese Hinduism before conducting a hands-on workshop on how to create religious offerings, which are ephemeral in nature but very close to life and full of symbolism.
We feel this water like energy, like spirit in the paddy field. Without water, no paddy field will there. Water is the gross or material form of the God. So in the Balinese Hindu, will touch, will use the water. This is use of the God. So if we bath by water, this is bath by God. When we drink water, this means that drink God. So because in the Hindu script say that Sarva Kalu Idam Brahman. It means that all thing is God. This is very important in the Balinese Hindu.
Day 3 was entirely dedicated to site visits. In the morning, the participants were brought to the house of Professor Dr. E. Wayan Dibia of Isi Denpasar, where he first gave a brief introduction on the importance of temples in Hindu Bali. Following the lecture, the participants took a look at Professor Dibia's family shrine located inside his home compound, and dropped by the temple of a village ward nearby, and watched a barong dance for which Bali is internationally renowned. Later in the day, the participants visited two famous temples in Bali, Goa Gajah and Tirta Empul. In Bali, there are thousands of active temples, ranging from the modest family shrines to the most extravagant places of worship. Different structures are dedicated to different entities of worship, some to the gods, others to religious teachers and ancestors. There are also temples for different professions, such as those used by farmers and fishermen. For the Balinese, these temples constitute the most important institution in their lives.
The locations or the ground plan or the situation of the house compound in Bali. So what you have to know here is the direction. So this is the north, and this is the south, and this is the east, and this is the west. So the northeast area is the area where the family built their family shrine. In the old days, when you go to someone's house, you will enter through the gate, and on your right you will see kitchen. The idea is to get the blessing from God Brahma before interacting with other people. The belief is that somebody coming from the big road may be followed by evil spirits. That's a very critical. When you visit somebody ill in the house, you have to clean yourself first, and that is why the kitchen is located here. This is the ground plan of the Kayangan Tiga, the village temple. This is the first one, the sanctuary, and this is the second courtyard, and this is the outside. The Wali art is taken place only here. So the rejang and baris that you saw during the welcome dinner is normally taking place inside the temple because it is a sacred dance form. Then the babali taking place here and entertainment taking place here. That means only the member of the temple congregation allowed to see this wali dance inside. Visitors are allowed with permission, but normally only the member of the temple congregation are allowed to enter this area. But here is a public space, so everyone can come and watch the performance.
It's clear that the Hindu temple is more than a sacred place. The temple is also a cultural center where Hindu Balinese life is at its most active. In Bali, each temple has its own anniversary or birthday. It is a religious celebration as well as a social occasion, filled with grand theatrical events complete with food, flowers, music, and performances. Day 3 of the program wrapped up with a visit to the Puri Lukisan Museum, the oldest art museum in Bali. The final day of the seminar and workshop kicked off with country presentations delivered by the participants. In total, 12 participants from 9 Southeast Asian nations presented the current situations of living Hindu traditions and highlighted certain aspects of Hindu influences in their own countries. One common theme among the presentations is how Hinduism often exists side by side with other religions and is part of the daily practice of people who may not identify themselves as Hindus. This is definitely true in Thailand, a Buddhist majority country. In Singapore, Hinduism has a larger presence than elsewhere besides Bali, thanks to the population of Singaporean Indians. Konan Cheong, a country representative from Singapore, referred to the work of sociologist Dr. Vanita Sinha, who has extensively studied the Hindu community in Singapore and coined the phrase mixing and matching to describe everyday Hindu practice.
Which she describes as a process of picking, choosing, and enacting a style of religiosity preferred by a practitioner, where diverse and sometimes contradictory components of ritual behavior and thinking coexist without trauma. So essentially, she's just saying that when you may identify as a Hindu or a Buddhist in Singapore, in daily practice, you're actually choosing from a variety of different ways of worshipping, ways of practice from even other religions, and still considering part of your own practice. And this is how so the example, one quite well-known example is the Sri Krishnan temple on Waterloo Street is also a very old temple built in the 19th century. which is actually right next to a very well-known, a very famous Chinese temple. Is known for an image of Avalokiteshvara or Guan Yin that is known for being like very good at predicting lottery results. So people, Chinese worshippers actually, before they go to the Guan Yin temple, they actually stop by the Sri Krishna temple and offer incense in this really Chinese style urn on the outside to the Hindu deities inside. And you kind of see Hindu believers also doing the same, and also Hindu believers going over to the Chinese temple.
The final session of the seminar was split into a presentation and a workshop conducted by Ranjit Makuni. Makuni is a multimedia artist, designer, and musician from India. He founded Sacred World, a design think tank that incorporates design and technology with traditional culture and spirituality. For his presentation on contemporary art and design in relation to Hindu beliefs, Makuni introduced the participants to some of Sacred World's previous works, which are design objects infused with technology and Hindu subject matters. One object is an unusually looking e-book on the most sacred city for Hinduism, Banaras.
We design e-books. This is a Shiva computer. The eyes would let you to access his multiple forms, as space, as time, as a householder, as Ardhanadeshwar, as the healer, as the teacher, as the dancer, and all his forms. So these kind of electronic books allow you to capture both the sacredness and take Banaras with you, and would lead you into interpretations of Shiva symbols.
The presentation on his artistic and design creations was followed by a workshop on classical Indian music. To Makuni, who is also a sitar player, music is a mode of access to the highest reality. For centuries, Indians have classified melodic scales in a circle in association with time. Notes are arranged in particular ways to be sung or played at different times of day to produce certain emotions. And while it requires discipline to compose and play music, Makuni says musicians are liberated in a certain way while performing. On day one, the participants had already tried simple Balinese dance movements and playing gamelan music. For the last activity of the seminar and workshop, they also had the opportunity to sing along to a song that Makuni had composed.
Sing, sing, sing.
And today we learn with Dr. Ranjit, Mr. Ranjit, Indian music. And Indian music, I learned a few scales. Yeah. A scale is a combination of notes, order of notes. So if you have the structure, you can play around with it, and then you can create music together. And what he said, that we should do things together to create love and understanding. What more could be better than making music together?
During the 4-day event, the participants had learned about the tangible and intangible aspects of Hindu arts in Southeast Asia and observed both the similarities and differences of the Hindu elements that exist between countries in the region. And as we were in Bali, home to the largest Hindu community in Southeast Asia, there was a special emphasis on the island's practice of Hinduism, how it is embedded in the very landscape of Bali and the daily life of the Balinese people. Although what everyone shared and acquired at the seminar and workshop was only a fraction of all the academic knowledge on Hinduism and Hindu arts in Southeast Asia, it offered a foundation for an understanding of this spiritual heritage that Southeast Asian people have shared. As religion plays such an important role in people's lives, art in relation to spirituality offers a unique way to study the cultural dynamics of a region.